You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello and welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm talking with Bernadette Bennett, who is Head of Legal at Moneypenny. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Bernie.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
We're going to be talking today about some of the research that Moneypenny have done around call answering, telephone handling. It's obviously your area of business. In the first instance, though, I've done a short introduction to you, Bernie, but perhaps you might tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Moneypenny, please.
Sure. So I head up the legal sector here at Moneypenny, and I am often referred to as Bernie, unless I'm in trouble, in which case it is the full title, Bernadette. I deal with all the new legal acquisition. I help our team and support them in looking after our legal clients. That includes nearly 1,000 law firms in the UK, and that includes now 78 of the top 200 firms and 4 out of the 5 Magic Circle. So we're really proud of that. And that's all thanks to our wonderful team of dedicated legal receptionists. So they handle 2 million calls and chats each year. And we're seen as the world's market leader now for telephone answering, live chat, outsourced switchboard, and customer contact solutions.
I'm going to dive straight into some research that you've published. Picking up the phone continues to be one of the most favourable ways of contacting a law firm, according to your research. There remains an issue with calls being answered by law firms. Why is this? Because this feels like an issue that simply isn't going away.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the issues surrounding call handling, they are varied. It doesn't help that with the global talent shortage that's being felt by all sectors is certainly playing its part, as has the pandemic. So suddenly lots of firms found themselves having to let go of receptionists and other front of house staff. And through no fault of their own, some of them were brilliant, but just at the time we were all being put through that very bizarre period, and throw all of that into the mix along with new behaviours surrounding the way that we work, and also the increasingly 24/7 expectations that we as the public place on our service providers. And it's been a perfect storm of change for the legal sector. And we still find that many legal firms, they're not giving call handling the strategic priority it deserves. And that's either because they don't have the right resource or because they just don't consider it business critical. But we know that call handling, it's more than just an activity, and it requires a strategy to ensure that callers get professional, courteous and efficient help when they need it the most. And we've got some research which has really helped drive that message home. People are increasingly picking up the phone because they've either got a complex matter or an urgent need, and these are often outside of traditional office hours, which means that perhaps they're anxious, they're vulnerable, they're angry or upset, and they need both urgency and empathy from these legal professionals that are looking after them. And they simply want to speak to a real person and feel looked after.
Does your research show that there are an increasing number of calls out of core office hours? And follow-up question, what are core office hours these days? Traditionally, 9 till 5, 5:30. Increasingly, it feels as though we're at our desks from, 8 in the morning through till 6, 7 o'clock at night, doesn't it?
And our conveyancing clients tell us the same thing. We're often at events and they're talking about live chats that come in at 3 a.m. because somebody is awake and they're stressed about something. They want to be able to sleep and they just have to put a step forward and start something in motion. And with the last 2 years being some of the busiest on record, and the conveyancing industry has really been feeling the pinch, working long hours, just like you say, managing heavy caseloads, conveyancers are simply trying to get the job done and at the same time reassuring anxious clients and providing the care that they'd expect. And all of that, it causes constant interruptions, and conveyancers are having to chip in and answer constantly ringing phones, which is unhelpful. And plus it's damaging to productivity and well-being too, which is where we've stepped in. And I think that one of the biggest trends we've seen over the last year is that call durations are increasing. And during the pandemic, we thought that was due to people feeling lonely and perhaps not speaking to many people all day.
Mm.
But it's largely as clients have got more complex needs, and they are more urgent as we're far more expecting. And this isn't surprising when you consider just how competitive and busy the property market has been. And just like you say, David, we've also seen an increase out of hours, which I think it's something like 9% year on year, which means conveyancers, they're starting the day with a to-do list already of calls to return and action. And both of these factors, they're making sure that they're adding to the pressures that conveyancers are feeling. And just a couple more stats, which I remember from legal firms' calls and how they've increased. We know that cold calls to legal firms have increased. So when you're busy, it's Friday afternoon, the last thing you want is somebody to interrupt your workflow. And cold calls are up 23%, up for the last quarter of last year compared to the year before. So those things are just adding to the distractions that are keeping people away from the job that they do best.
So is one of the issues around the fact that the phone doesn't get answered, this fact that people are working from home more? I mean, do they have access to a phone? Do people use VoIP phones?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the case that they're simply not set up to answer the phone from home?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we've all felt the effects of that when we had to suddenly learn to be agile overnight and need to make sure that our phones were in a great signal. And if you had the unfortunate case of living in a black hole, it was more difficult for people to get hold of you. So during the pandemic, we've seen firms faced with all those legacy phone system issues. And even now, you still meet a firm who deals with a phone system that just isn't up to the job of remote working. And it makes it challenging for them to try and adapt and suit the new working from home model. And it's definitely been difficult to do that whilst also trying that balancing act of ensuring a positive client experience too. But since the pandemic, I think a lot of these issues have been resolved in terms of how firms have embraced the tech that supports them to do this. But the challenge is making clever tech choices that you're using the right one that works for you and your clients as well. And we know that legal firms are doing more with teams. We're doing it with both colleagues and clients. We're using it internally every day in a bid to be more productive and accommodate remote workers. And it's why we launched Microsoft Teams integration, because it allows us to transfer calls directly through to employees on the Teams platform. It could be through their laptops or on their mobile, but essentially it's wherever they're working, so that we're getting calls routed through to the right people first time. And it means less interruptions because as a team trying to transfer calls, we can see the status and presence of the employee, and we're only transferring calls when that individual is free. So this saves a lot of time and does make for a better caller experience. But speaking more broadly, the biggest cause of poor call handling, it's due to it not being prioritized. And this is surprising when in legal, there's a huge awareness of the link between first impressions, referrals, reputation, and revenue. It's so well understood, but yet that first hurdle of making sure that you're answering the phone or that your website is easy to navigate is sometimes missed. And we know that recent data from the law firm Marketing Club's What Clients Want research, it shows that it's 50-50 whether call handling will leave clients impressed or wanting. And that's just not good enough. So there's a huge opportunity for firms to improve on this.
It almost feels as though answering the phone is a marketing exercise. Is it a case that
Mm.
firms should be thinking about having a strategy in place for answering the phone? It sounds a little extreme, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it's something which I think we've tried to share our knowledge on for quite a few years, because it impacts so many things, from making that amazing first impression. And there's lots of research behind how quickly somebody makes a decision as to whether or not they'll choose that law firm. And it's not just handling your calls promptly and professionally and handling them well, but even the basics of actually answering the calls. And I was on a webinar last Friday, and somebody was saying that they try and get hold of one of their clients and they're closed at lunchtime, which just should be unheard of these days. So yeah, I absolutely think that firms need to think about that. And one of the first things for them to consider is resource, because the optimum solution is to have dedicated resource for all call handling, and be that in-house or via an outsourced partner. They need to make sure that these incoming calls don't disturb fee earners, and that callers receive the best experience, which is really difficult to do. So there has to be a plan in place to make sure that you've got the right people, and they're available at the right times. Use overflow support for that team when they're unavailable, or if you need to take the pressure off. And if your office-based team are taking responsibility, then be clear about who is expected to answer the phone, what's required of them, and also who isn't, because not everyone should be trusted with answering the phones. And the second part of this is to understand the nature of your calls. And there'll be a significant proportion wanting quotes and updates on their cases, not to mention from other people like estate agents, suppliers, partners. And not all of these require immediate access to a solicitor. Perhaps a request for a case update could result in a diary appointment for a call back, instead of that ping pong effect of missed calls and messages, and constantly chasing your tail when you're busy. Or perhaps the admin team could be shown how to calculate quotes so that they can take responsibility for that task. And thinking more broadly about why people call can really help streamline processes, by assigning these tasks to dedicated teams, and it will support the business more strategically.
I know your research looks at the impact of what you call a bad call.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through your findings there. What is a bad call? What does it look like
Yeah,
or
and I'm sure.
sound like?
Yeah, I'm sure we can all think of those examples. And sometimes it's really difficult when you are under pressure and you are rushed and multitasking. I know I've been juggling before now, and it's a bit of a known fact for this one email, which a colleague I think printed off to make sure I never did again. I called somebody that was called Robert Virginia in an email, because you're rushed, and things go wrong, and the huge fallout of those types of errors means that bad emails, bad calls are bad for business. And it's that simple. Bad calls are those which aren't handled promptly or professionally, where callers can't get the help that they need, either at that time or even being told that they can by way of follow-up, and where new leads are lost and reputations are damaged in that first impression. And our research shows that following a badly handled call, 36% of people will take their business elsewhere, which is really powerful. 34% will make a complaint, which creates more work for everybody. And a quarter will leave a negative review. So all the more important for legal firms to have that duty to do right by their clients and callers.
We've done a podcast around review platforms recently as well. And there were some interesting stats that came out of that about the fact that only 1 in 4 people will ever try and contact an organization that they've been recommended. What they will do is they will go online, they'll do their research.
Yeah.
But of those 1 in 4, if they then pick up the phone and they have this really negative experience, then you're reducing your chances of winning business, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I think we've tried to raise awareness of having that out of hours support as well. I keep referencing the pandemic, but I think it was such a huge movement of change for law firms, and much needed change in some instances. So, traditional office hours, it's no longer 8:30 till 6, or even 9 to 5, as some firms are. It's making sure that you're available and providing a channel to communicate in the way that people want to communicate with you. And we've captured plenty of huge revenue generating inquiries of an evening to really bring that message home. And our clients will celebrate that with us, if we do capture a call out of hours, because sometimes it's not very familiar, but it only takes that one to be something of noteworthy, something to celebrate. I know that we've got a law firm that deals heavily in one particular area of law, and they really didn't think that anyone would use live chat as a channel, that they wouldn't get any business from it because their type of customers wouldn't use live chat. And they proved themselves wrong when they had a huge inquiry that resulted in millions of pounds worth of new business, and it's paid for the cost of live chat for a lifetime. And it doesn't have to be that we've got huge volumes captured outside of office hours. It just takes one where they've come through, they've had a great experience either on the phone or via live chat, whichever tool that they've chosen, and they've had a great experience, which means that they've not gone to a competitor. And it's we've got examples of that happening every day.
We're going to talk about alternative methods of contact in a second,
Mm-hmm.
but just thinking about live chat specifically, is that a new business tool? Is it a support function? How does it sort of best work for a law firm?
I think it's a bit of both. I know during the pandemic, when people weren't yet able to work from home or their phone systems were being looked at, and they were just in that that terrible stage of trying to find a new way of working, by having live chat on their website, it just meant that they were now contactable 24/7. Whether or not they were able to return those calls in a timely fashion was something they were working on. But meanwhile, if a client or a prospect needed to reach them, they could do that via live chat 24/7. And I think that, as well as offering it as another communication tool, what's known about live chat in the legal space, and we can see the chats that come through, it's people who perhaps are a little adverse to picking up the phone. It could be something that is a private matter that they don't want to speak about openly, and live chat is the perfect remedy for that. It could even be something that, if we're spending a lot of time at home together, they don't get a moment alone and they want to have a private conversation, and they can do that on their mobile phone and begin a chat, arrange a call back with a solicitor. It's not something which people perhaps necessarily need to put off until another time. They can multitask and do it whilst they're working, whilst they're at home, completing in other tasks. And we definitely see a shift in the performance of live chat out of hours. We sort of call from 5 till 8 the sofa and search hours, because we know that's when people are getting home from their working day, and all the things that they've put off, they're now finding a way to get round to. And you want to be there and you want to be available when your competitors aren't, so that you can capture all of those opportunities.
You've touched on the immediacy and the desire for consumers to have more immediacy from their service providers, including legal service providers.
Mm-hmm.
But presumably live chat doesn't actually put you in touch with a legal services expert. How do you manage those expectations in terms of somebody contacting you, but then not being able to get the support that they're looking for?
Yeah, and I can understand that. Myself as a user, I use live chat all the time, and sometimes it can be frustrating if I want to find out why Sky isn't working, or why my mobile phone has run out of data, whatever it can be. But I think with the legal services, it's a completely different mindset, because people are often feeling anxious. It could be that they're upset about something and they just want to take that first step in getting help, and to be able to speak to a real person on live chat that can share their problems, show empathy. That makes all the difference. It's not just about getting them the answers they want. It's handling that chat professionally and with care. So often you'll have people asking questions that we can fulfill, because we've got the knowledge bank in order to find the right answer and answer their query. But on those we can't, they seem to be really okay with us saying, we'll get somebody to give you a call back first thing tomorrow. What's the time that suits you? And I'll pass this message along to my team. Because to them, 8 o'clock at night or whatever time of it's out of hours, I don't think they're expecting to speak to a lawyer, but they are hoping to take that first step in starting something. And if it's during the daytime, that makes it a lot easier, because we can, of course, give a spare a time frame and say that somebody can give you a call back this afternoon. But I think it's more so about how you deal with those people who are really just looking to start something, start a process, and feel better for taking that first action in getting the help that they need.
So other than live chat, which we've talked about relatively extensively, what are the other options to telephone calls and live chat? There are things like Facebook Messenger, but I would sense that firms might be really nervous about widening the number of ways that you could be contacted because they all need managing in some way.
Mm. Absolutely. And I think sometimes, and I'm typical for it, I'll often judge when was the last time somebody posted or the last time they responded to something, just to see if it's even worth getting in touch with them via their social pages. So I agree with you. You've got to really be mindful, not just having something set up, but managing it too. But I do think a lot of our legal clients, they're really good at offering a variety of tools to reach out to their clients. Other than email and phone, we know that law firms are now calling on digital channels, just as you've mentioned, like social media, as well as live chat. And we also know from research that there's growing desire for answers 24/7, and by different profiles of clients as well. So, for example, younger generations, they're especially happy with these instant message tools. In fact, some of them prefer them. So firms need to embrace them in order to stay relevant and appeal to, I guess, demanding tech savvy audiences. And live chat in particular definitely is one of the more easier ways to capture new inquiries and to just be available, appear open for business 24/7, because we know that legal websites, they need to perform, they need to be more than just a shop window, and they've got the power to generate leads, answer FAQs, provide information, as well as support sales and customer service activities. And live chat can do that by helping visitors navigate the websites. It could be that legal terminology is a stumbling block for them if they don't know of all the different ways things are referred to. So just helping them find what they're looking for. And live chat offers a direct line of communication so that clients and prospects, they can ask those quick questions in real time and on their terms, and get the answers they need there and then. And it may be that your clients, as I mentioned earlier, they don't have the time to call or email. And it's something that's great to use as a multitasking tool again, to make sure that if they're too busy to get round to making that first step, live chat's perfect for that because it provides an informal way of effectively being more accessible and helping move those client queries along without making anyone's effort too much on their part, because it's all about the ease of communication. You know, you can have a dedicated resource to handle these chats internally who can happily do that and deal with the volume, or you could use, you know, for example, Moneypenny, who do offer managed chat, and that way it's not something which takes up any resource internally, but you'll receive those inquiries as they flood through, and we can even ask pre-qualifying questions to help filter them through to the right team.
So we're rapidly moving towards the end of the discussion, Bernie, and I just wanted to get your thoughts, your expertise, I suppose, given that you've been with the business a long time, on what firms need to be thinking about in 2023 with
Mm-hmm.
regard to it's almost a communication strategy, isn't it? It's not just
Mm,
about call handling now, it's about the way they answer the phone, the way they respond to live chat, the way they respond to, I don't know, WhatsApp messages or something like that.
mm-hmm.
What top tips or what would you advise firms to be thinking about so that they are making the most of the opportunity it presents?
The legal sector have unfairly been labelled with perhaps not being the first adapters of new technology, the first people to embrace it, and that's really not the case. Live chat was actually set up just before I was going to go on maternity leave, and when I came back, I was so surprised to see that the most popular sector that live chat had been a hit with was legal, because law firms, above all else, they're precious about that customer journey. They want their clients to experience something quite unique speak when they walk through their door, when they visit their website, when they ring into their law firm. And it's so customer centric. So it really shouldn't have been a surprise that live chat has been such a success in that area. But I also think it's a combination of making sure that you're available and accessible, and having an awareness that there's a strong emotional rationale behind how an individual chooses to get in touch with a firm. And with the phone, it is increasingly because people do have complex needs and they require a blend of empathy, expertise, and a discussion that can't be met any other way. And you really need to think about that when you choose the team who are going to be having those initial conversations. I know that we spoke to Claire Yates a little while ago, who provides training on this type of thing. And it was so empowering hearing her say that you really shouldn't be just trusting anybody with answering the phone. And she came up with a few bad examples, which I think we can all relate to. And you have to make sure that you're investing on the right people to breathe sunshine down the phone and make them really want to be a client, a partner that really does want to work with you. And I think that the firms that recognise this and give callers the time and empathy and the professional client journey that they need, they're the ones that will live happier, more fulfilled, and they'll have more loyal clients. And if there's anything you're going to take from some of the examples I gave about live chat today, you can have it on specific areas of your website to try and generate new revenue for your business, but also think about it for your careers page. Every time I catch up with firms in a smaller group, the topic which is often part of the conversation is about recruitment these days. So even just by having it on your website to try and appeal to people who are thinking about applying for a job, and to be available and say, if you've got any questions about one of the roles, I'm here to help, because we want to encourage you to generate new revenue, not just from inquiries, but as a whole, more broadly speaking, and helping with your recruitment as well.
I love the phrase "to spread sunshine down the phone." I think that's a wonderful,
Yeah.
what a wonderful analogy. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Bernie. It's been really good fun to chat.
Been really fun. Thank you, David. I hope there's some good takeaways there.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Bernie. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.